This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so like I mentioned, today I just want to go over the basics of the system, entering profiles, entering bookings, go over some frequently asked questions that I get from a lot of new users. And again, if you have questions, put them in the chat or wait till the end. You can unmute and ask them that way. So we'll start here with the dashboard. And, one thing to note, one of the challenges I see a lot of with new users in VacationCRM is in most cases there are at least a couple of different ways to do something as far as how to enter something or how to do certain steps. So what you really need to do is kind of figure out which process works best for you and, use it that way. And I'll try to go over, with each step where there's an opportunity to do it one way versus another. But as far as entering bookings, there's, depending on how you count them, there's either 3 or 4 different steps to entering a booking. Now, step 1, no matter what, you need to get profiles created for the clients going on a trip. Now, I'm going to show you existing data, but if I were starting from scratch, I would just click New Profile. I'll just go ahead and click this, and it'll give me a new profile screen where I would just fill out the details for a person. And generally, I'm going to do the lead person first. And if you are manually entering, in the strongest possible recommendation, take the time to enter everything you have on this person. I often see times where an agent will enter the absolute bare minimum just to get the profile created, and then it will cause issues down the road. For example, the other day I got an email from an agent that was asking, why their client did not receive a final payment reminder email, which those are obviously important, and that's an auto email that goes out. Anyway, that agent's client did not receive a final payment reminder. I don't know if the booking was canceled or if it was just late or whatever. But I looked into it, and the reason for that was because that agent never entered an email address for that client. So at that point, it's impossible for VCRM to send an email to that client. So it's just things like that you can have problems with if you just put in the bare minimum. Now, to kind of show you the end result of creating a profile, I'll just open my profile here in the new tab. And that's another tip as well. Oftentimes, I want to go to a different screen without leaving the screen that I'm on. So what you can do is you can go to, something rather than just clicking on it, you can right click, and depending on what browser you're using, there's probably an option for open link in new tab. I do that a lot because then I can just go to that new tab up here, do what I need to do, save changes, whatever, and then when I'm done, I can just close that tab, and then I'm back where I started, on this screen. Now, in addition to right clicking, clicking, open link in new tab, if you're using a mouse with a scroll wheel, generally that scroll wheel is actually a button you can push down on it and it'll click. It's like a third click. Generally that's also a shortcut to open a new tab. So rather than have to right click, you just hover over it and click on your scroll wheel and it'll do the same thing. So we'll go to this profile. This is my profile. After you create the profile itself, you'll see it like this where it has everything filled out. And then the other thing you want to make sure is you have profiles created for anyone else going on this trip with this person. So profiles can be linked together. So under my family and friends, I have an excessive amount of people here. Most of these people are just completely made up people, but here's my wife, for example, and my daughter's down here. So if anyone else is traveling with this person and they are not on this list, you have one of 2 options. If you know the other person has a profile in the system somewhere, you're going to use this button. So this is a button that you use to find another existing profile in the system and link it to this one. Now, if you do this, when you click this, you need to first look up the name and find the person, and it'll put their profile ID in here. But you also need to make sure you select a relationship type, because if you don't select it, it won't link them together. So, pick whatever the relationship type is and then click Create Link. And that will link the 2 existing profiles together so that new person will now show up under family and friends. If these are brand new clients and you know for a fact that they are not in the system, you can use one of these 2 buttons to add a new profile. They both do the same thing. It's just, typically like if it's a child, it's not like you need to enter a billing address. You need the basics like name, gender, date of birth. So in that case, I would just do a quick profile, which is just a quick pop-up box that gives you limited options for you to fill out. Sorry, I'm having internet issues here, so it's not going to load. There we go. So again, you need to specify the relationship type, and then you put in the basics like name, gender, date of birth, and then click create, and that'll create it. Now, just because you did a quick profile, at the end of the day, it creates the same style of profile, the same type of profile. So if you put in the basics and then a week later you need to go in and put more information, you can simply just, search by name or go, click on them here and, say Sophia has an email address or a date of birth I need to enter. You can always enter that stuff later. The profile's the same, it's just you're adding less information. Whereas if you clicked add full profile, it would have given you a screen like this where you can put in everything, like, address and phone number and things like that. But oftentimes you don't need that. The second step would be to add a new trip under that profile, and that's where you're going to enter the trip name and the status and the trip date and things like that. Now, all this stuff that I just talked about, this is one of those places where you could do it another way. So we also have forms that clients can fill out. Now, generally, what is recommended is, if you're an agency owner and you have a website and you have ICs under you, I guess it doesn't matter, even if you don't have ICs under you, you can create pages on your website and then embed the forms on them. Now, for demo purposes, I have all of the forms on a single page on this one website. You're generally not going to want to do that in a real situation, because if you need the client to fill out this, this form, and you tell them, go to this link and go to the bottom and fill out the last form on there. Clients don't always pay attention. They don't read. So, oftentimes you're going to get a client who's going to try to fill out this form, which is not the one you want them to fill out. So what most agencies will do is they'll have a drop down like this, like a contact or something. And then in that, you can have, reservations or book now, submit a payment, and request information or something like that, because there's 3 different forms. There's the registration form, the payment form, and the trip lead form. Now, for time's sake, I'm mainly going to focus on the registration form here. Think of this as like a booking form. This is designed to be sent to the client after you've quoted them, sent them all the information, and they like one of the options you provided them. They're ready to book it. That's where you'd send them this form for them to fill out. Now, I went ahead before this call and pre-filled it out for you. You don't have to just sit here and watch me manually fill it out. But there's 5 steps for the client to fill out. The first step is the guest information. So this is where they will select, the agent they're working with, how many people are going. So in this case, it's 2 guests. We've got Alex here, and let's say his wife, Alicia. And I didn't fill out everything just because this is all fake information. Step 2 is contact information, so they're going to put in their address, email address, phone number. And then step 3, this is where they'll go back to the information you sent them in the quote, and they're going to confirm from the options provided what would they like to book. So in this case, he wants to go to Royalton Negril, August 9th through 16th, oceanfront suite. It's an adult vacation. He does want travel protection. He's submitting his visa here, and he wants to pay just the deposit for now. And then finally, step 5 is just any requests. So this way he's saying, hey, this is an anniversary trip. I don't know if he's, asking for if there's anything special for that. Terms and conditions here. He checks I agree, enter today's date, finds his name, and then he's going to submit that. And then if he did everything correctly, he will get a message like this with a green check mark. And then this little message here you can customize to say whatever you want. And then generally when this is submitted, you, the agent, will receive a notification email. Now, that email is pretty generic. It basically says this client name filled out this form, go to your dashboard to view. There's also another email you can turn on to go to the client or the agent or both that is essentially a copy of the information that was submitted on the form that gets sent out via email immediately upon submission. So let's just pause the process and talk about those forms briefly. So owners that are admin users of the system, you can find the links to those forms under settings, and we'll go to system settings, and then we will go to company settings. And again, I'm just going to open this in a new tab. And then on this screen, we're going to click on Manage API Form Fields. And so here's where you set up the forms. This is where you pick the color for the, the sections and the font in the sections. Now, these need to be different colors from each other, right? I see frequently where agents will select the same color here, and then they'll email me because they'll say there's, these titles are gone. And it's just, they're there, but you can't see them. You got to highlight them to see them because they made the font and the color, the background the same color, so they, blend in with each other. So this checkbox, send a copy of the submitted information to the client. That means if you have this box checked, they will receive a copy that, in their email where they can see the name they entered and date of birth and things like that, so they can double check it for accuracy. And then in here is where you can customize the form. So some things you can't remove, like for example, last name is required, so there's not even an option to make it visible or required. But what you see here, you can make optional or required, or you can make it visible or uncheck this to hide it. So I have some things hidden in here. And then this is the disclaimer that shows up at the bottom of the form. This is for the insurance section. You can say whatever you want. This is that message you saw when I submitted it with that green check mark. You can change what it says there. You can update the agreement checkboxes. There's a couple of options for, like do you want to have e-check as a payment type, or gift card as a payment type, or pay by phone. And then here is where you can add additional things that you may want to ask about. So the only thing I have visible is how would you prefer to receive your travel documents, which I have in the trip info section. So if we go to step 3, I added that here. So if there's another question you want to ask on the form that's not on here, this is where you would do that. So you title it whatever you want it to say, what section on the form do you want it to go in, where in that section do you want it to go, and then where do you want the answer to that to go in the system. And if you leave it as add to comments, which is recommended in most cases, it's just going to go to the notes of the trip that it creates. Now, if we go back one screen to this screen, there's also an option for enable user level API forms. So most agencies don't have this box checked because the owner will edit these forms. We'll go back in here real quickly, and I forgot to say these are the links to them. So if you want to check out the form, these buttons are the direct links to them, so you could just open a new tab and copy and paste that in and go to that link. These buttons are to embed them on a page on your website. So you'll put them on there. And in most cases, the owner will edit these forms as needed. They'll put in the terms at the bottom however they want them. They'll set them up how they want them. Then they'll put them on their website, and then every agent within that agency will direct their clients to the same form on the same website for them to fill out. And the URL to that can be made whatever you want on your website, like youragency.com/booknow. And it's nice and easy. However, some agencies operate more like a host where each IC under you has their own agency name, their own website, so maybe they want their own forms on their own website. So that's what that checkbox back here is for, to enable user-level API forms. If you check that and save, every agent within your account under settings will have an option for manage user API forms. So I'll go in there. And so basically, this is my own set of forms just for me. You can see the colors are different here. Anything I change is only for my form, and these are the links to my form. So, the main difference is there won't be the who's your travel agent question at the top because this is my form only. So if anyone fills out any of these forms, it goes straight to me no matter what. And every agent has their own set of forms. So depending on how your agency is set up, you may or may not turn those on. But like I said, in most cases, to make it uniform and easy, agency owners are going to not turn these on. They're going to use the agency level forms. They're going to put them on their website, and then everyone will use those together. All right, so now back to where we were. The client submitted that form, and in addition to emailing the agent to notify them, there will also be a notification on their dashboard. So this is that one for Alex Lewis. You can see from today's date. So basically, this client filled out the form. It notified me. I logged into VCRM, and now from today's date, I have this new web reservation request. And what that actually does for you in the system is first we'll click here on this trip, and you can see that it has created a trip for me automatically, and it's filled out a bunch of the information. So, the trip name is web reservation request. I like to change this to something that I can tell what it is just from the name. So in this case, let's say where were they going? Jamaica, August 2025, something like that. Status is initial contact. It's an adult vacation. And then in the notes here, you can see the details from step 3. So I can see, what resort he wanted, what room category, does he want travel protection, it's an anniversary trip, whatever he put in the special request. And then I can see he wants to go August 9th for 7 nights. So that all came in for me. In addition to this, if we click on the profile tab, you can see that it also has created a profile for Alex and filled everything out for me. I've got his name and contact info. It also created a profile for Alicia. Now, it doesn't ask them what their relationship type is, so it's going to be other. You could edit this and change the relationship type if you wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it as is for right now. He's got his address, got his full credit card number securely stored in here, and then here you can see he selected he wants to pay deposit only. And then also, if I need proof of anything, you can go to the bottom of that screen, this submitted form. This is a copy of the form as it was filled out by the client. So you can always look here to double check what was entered on the form if needed. Now, you can't get the full credit card number. It's, for security purposes, but you can still see, what type of card, the last 4, what options he selected, things like that. Or if you need to send this to the client, like if they say, hey, that's not what I asked for, you could send this link to the client and say, here's what you filled out. But they should have that email if you turn on that email as well. It was sent to them. All right, so let's go back into that trip. So the main thing with this is I've just saved a ton of time because I didn't have to enter those 2 profiles, and it added a trip for me. Whereas if I had done this from scratch, I would have had to manually create each profile, then click Add New Trip, and fill out these details. Now, where a lot of new users get stuck is here. You cannot enter the trip total. You can see they're zeroed out, nor can you enter the amount paid or the balance due. The reason these are grayed out is because it automatically calculates these numbers based on other information that gets entered. So we need to do the 3rd step, which is add a new reservation. Now, before I do that, I could go in here and enter the final payment date. I'll just go ahead and do that. Let's say it's due July 25th, and make sure to save. And then once the page reloads, that's saved in there. So I'm going to do the 3rd step, which is add new reservation. You have to do this on every booking. And the reason trips and reservations are separated is because the reservation is where you enter the actual booking details, like the supplier, the booking number, the commission amount, the total cost. And in some cases, you might use more than one supplier to get everything booked for a client's trip. And so in those cases, you're going to want to have multiple reservations under the trip. So if you use one supplier to book flight and hotel, but another supplier to book transfers, you would end up with 2 reservations under that trip. Now, actually, before I move on, one other thing on here. In the situation where you have multiple bookings, if you only want to show the client the total for the entire trip, not the individual reservation costs, there is this box right here, hide invoice reservation totals. If you check this, it'll show all the details kind of together, and then at the very bottom will be the trip total, which is the total of all reservations added together. Whereas if this is not checked and you have a situation with 2 reservations under the trip, it'll show them a subtotal for how much the cost is for each reservation, and then at the very bottom will be the trip totals. So I'm going to leave this unchecked. Let's just do an easier situation here. So I'm going to click Add New Reservation. And again, this is where I'm going to put in the actual booking details. Now you can see there's a couple of required things right away. So the reservation type here, let's just say it's a package. And the supplier, let's say is, just say Apple. And we'll put in this Apple booking number. Now again, what you'll notice is you cannot enter a total or a final total. Those are also grayed out. I get a lot of questions about that. That too is by design. So we're just going to go ahead and click create here for right now. And the reason these are grayed out is because ideally what you're going to end up with is at the end of the process, you're going to have reservation components like these items added below, and that's you're going to put in the details for each item, including the cost. So you'll scroll down here. Now, some suppliers, when you select it and you select package, it knows what a typical package consists of, so it adds blank components for you for air, 2 flights, hotel, insurance, transfer, stuff like that, other transfer. So you would just go in and fill these out. Now, if it doesn't add these, you can add them manually. So you just go up here, you select the one you want, click add new, select the next one, add new, and then you go down and fill them out. Now, this is what eventually ends up building the invoice for the client. So I like to put these in chronological order. So you can either collapse and drag and drop. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to say, there's a flight to the destination. Once they get there, there's usually a transfer. Next would be the hotel. Now, it has another transfer component. I'm going to delete that because I'm just going to label the first one as round trip just so I don't have to put all that in. Then we have the flight back home. Then I'm going to put insurance last. Now, that's this process of me entering bookings. This is the slowest way to do it. And this is another situation where you have different options depending on who the supplier is that you booked with. So for some suppliers, we have a direct integration with them, which means our system is connected to theirs. You can just simply put in the type, the supplier, the booking number, and you can click this button here, this update reservation from supplier, and it'll import the booking details directly for you. So it'll fill out, the deposit amount, the commission amount, and then all these details it'll fill out automatically for you. The other option for suppliers that we aren't integrated with, some of them will work with what's called the VacationCRM stripper. And the stripper allows you to take the confirmation email, and if it's in an HTML format, like let's say Vax or Sandals or Disney uses, and you would copy and paste that entire confirmation email into here. Or if it's a PDF like what a lot of the cruise lines use, this button will say upload reservation, and you just upload preferably the agent copy of the confirmation PDF. But either way, it'll scan through that, strip out the relevant details, and put them in the reservation components like down here for you. So now a quick way to know if a supplier works one way or the other is when you select it, if this button is clickable, you know that it works with the integration. So if I select, say, Air Canada, it's grayed out. I can't click it because we're not integrated with them. Whereas if I select Apple, it is clickable. Another thing you can do, too, is you can go to the User Center here in Newsfeed. And then in the integration information, there is a PDF here. Oops, I just closed it. Sorry, I don't know why it's downloading it like that, but it's my browser. Anyway, there's a PDF here that you can view the list of integrated suppliers. So these are the ones that we're directly integrated with. These are the ones that work with the stripper, and so on. So you've got that as well. And then for the stripper, if you put in the reservation type, the supplier, and the booking number and click create, which I've already done, if you see this button, you know it works with the stripper. Or if it says upload reservation, it works with the stripper. So that's a quick way to know. But if this is grayed out and there is no paste or upload reservation button, that's a sign that you're going to have to manually enter this booking. And so this is your deposit amount. This is what is required to deposit on this booking. It does not actually reflect a payment. This is just to show on the invoice initially what they need to pay for their deposit. And this is when the deposit is due. This is also what the system uses for the booking date, which I realize that, when you import it, it might show the 6th instead of the 4th because usually you have roughly 48 hours to deposit on something. But, that's the closest date that gets sent to us when you import bookings to booking date. So that's what we chose to use for the reporting. And we're just going to go through, and I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me fill out everything, but I'll just put in some basic information. So I'll put 500 for expected reservation commission. and then I'm going to put in some of the details. So you can put the airport or the airline and airport short abbreviations, and when you save it, it'll repopulate written out. So DL for Delta Airlines. I'll put booking number, or I'm sorry, the flight number. And let's just put, I forget what dates I said this was, the 9th for 7 nights. All right, and this is where you finally enter your pricing. Now, if you have a breakdown or you know a breakdown, split it up amongst the different components. So let's say the air was $1,200, and the transfer was, let's say, $150, and the hotel was $3,700. When I save it, it's going to automatically add those up. Now, for the flights, you don't need this, if the total cost is $1,200, you don't have to split this to $600 and then go down to the other flight and put $600. In fact, if you do that, your pricing will be wrong. Just put the total under one of the flights and then leave the other one at 0. Now, if you don't have a breakdown and it's impossible to figure it out, you can just put the total cost right here under the main part of the trip, which is typically the hotel or a cruise could be. But if you can break it down, do so. And again, I'm not going to fill all this out, but and if you put the number of nights and the check-in date, it will automatically calculate the checkout date for you. And we'll just put 2 adults, and that's probably good for now. So we'll just go ahead and click save up here, and you'll watch the total will populate for you. Okay, so $5,050. Now, you'll also notice the commission. It calculated the agent's portion. So for owners, when you enter your agents in, if you put their commission split percentage in, so in this case 80%, it will automatically calculate their portion of commission for you. So agents just enter this and it'll populate yours. If for some reason that's 0, just tell your owner or your admin user to enter your commission percentage so it can calculate your portion. And you can see I've got all this stuff in here. Now another thing while we're in here are these buttons here. Ignore the test ones, that's just for this account. So you've got register with tourism board, manually registered, or register with my booking rewards. So depending on which supplier, which hotel chain you select here will determine what buttons show up here. So for some, St. Lucia, we are integrated with their tourism board pre-registration program. So if this was a St. Lucia booking, I could click this and I could pre-register it with my account. So basically, we'd fill out all the details here and, which program, which hotel, and so on. Manually registered, this is for hotel chains or programs that we aren't integrated with. So like the One Love Rewards program, we are not connected to them. So let's say I went ahead and I manually registered it. I could go ahead and record that for my own records here. I registered it today, and now it's marked as registered. Now, My Booking Rewards, if you're not familiar with them, they are the company that handles the pre-registration programs for a lot of different hotel chains and even destinations. So the main ones I can think of off the top of my head is they are the ones who handle Royalton or Blue Diamond's pre-registration program. They also do the Dominican Republic Tourism Board, as well as Original Resorts, Coconut Bay, and some others. So, since this is a Royalton booking, I can also register it with My Booking Rewards. So I'm going to select Blue Diamond, Royalton the Grill, and pick the room category that they're in. Let's just say Swim Out Diamond Club. Fill out all this information, click register. It will send it to my My Booking Rewards account, and their system is actually smart enough to register it with any program that they have that this applies to. So in this case, Blue Diamond and My Caribbean Rewards. If this were, say, Royalton Punta Cana, it would also register it with the Dominican Republic Tourism Board as well, directly. And then once you've got everything entered in here and it looks good on this screen, you can go up here and you can go ahead and preview your invoice. You always want to preview first, especially when you're new, so you can double check, make sure everything looks good. This will be your agency logo. This will be your information, client's information. Here are the details here. You can see I didn't fill everything out. I left these things blank. Here's the reservation totals and then the grand totals, which are all reservations added together, how much has been paid, all that. And your terms and conditions, which also are customizable. Now, if you see a mistake when you open that preview up, go in here, like for example, I forgot to finish typing in, the flight details, fill that out, save it, preview it again. Once you're satisfied with the preview, you can go ahead and generate an invoice. And when you click it, it'll just say that one was generated. So what that does is every time you click that, it attaches a copy of this version of the invoice to the client's trip. And so now I want to go back to the trip screen where we started, and the fastest way to do that is to just click here. And I realized I didn't resave the trip name when I changed it. That's all right. So anyway, I've got my information in here. Now you can see I've got a total and a balance due. Nothing has been paid yet because I haven't recorded any payments. And I've got a reservation down here, but I have no payments. And here's my invoice that I generated. So if I want to send that to the client, I can just use the email icon, or I can view it here, whatever I need to do. Now, there's also another invoice you can send to clients called the invoice approval. So you've got invoice and invoice approval. So the invoice approval is very similar to the regular invoice, except it's really designed to send it at the beginning, like right now, like after I put it on hold, but before the client is, submitted their deposit payment, before I've run their card for deposit payment. And it's the exact same as a regular invoice, except the bottom has an agreement section. So you or an admin can create different versions of these. So in this case, like let's say you always offer travel protection, they can either accept it or decline it. I have one for those that accepted it, one for those who did not. So let's say they decline travel protection, and I want him to sign off on the details, that he's aware of what that means. I can send this to him before I lock him in, by placing his deposit. So I'll just click Send Invoice Approval, and it will take me to this preview screen. What email address do you want to send it to? I'm going to change this to mine. And, here's the email you're going to use to send it, and send. All right, so basically that's going to send them an email, and it's going to tell them, whatever it says, whatever you want to say in the email, but basically, hey, client, before I can proceed, I need you to fill out this, approve this invoice, and this is what they will see. Something like this. Now, in their version, this is all grayed out, I can't edit this, but in their version, they can, check these boxes, enter today's date. Oh, I don't even know the date for them. Sign their name, and then they will have a green approve button or red decline button. And it'll show you on their trip the status, whether they viewed it, or if you just sent it, or if they've approved or declined it. And it'll also email you a notification email when it's done. So once they approve that, you can actually, you're good to go. You can run their card for payment, and then you can record that payment. Now, again, you have options here because some suppliers we are directly integrated with as far as not just importing bookings in, but submitting payments to them. So let's say that it's a $500 deposit is required. We'll just say that's initial deposit. They want to use his Visa. Now, because this is Apple and we are integrated with Apple, if I select this, I can click submit payment to supplier. And clicking that button is like swiping their card. It basically sends a message to, in this case, Apple or Vax saying, run this card for this amount towards this booking. And it'll come back with a response letting you know if the card went through or if it's declined. But let's say this is, a supplier that we aren't integrated with, or maybe I already made the payment directly in Vax. At that point, this doesn't really matter. You can leave it blank or you can select it. And you're just going to click create, which is just adding a dummy payment strictly to update the balance in here. So the balance here matches what's in VAX. So we'll click create. Now we've got a new balance. And then after every payment, I want to generate a new invoice. And I'll click here to go back to the trip. And now you can see that it's changed the status automatically to deposited. And this is important too. So if you're manually entering a trip, I should have said this earlier, make sure you select a status to start out. Because if you leave this blank, it will remain blank until you change it, which can cause issues because the status determines a lot of when and where the trip shows up throughout the system, which reports it's included in, which auto emails go out to clients, things like that. So if you don't select the status, VCRM has no clue if this is a valid booking or just a fake booking. Whereas, it knows what a waiting deposit status is or canceled or deposit or any of those. So now it's deposited status, so we're good there. And I've got 2 invoices generated. So I've got a history here. So if I ever need to go back to the first one before any payments were made, I've got that in here. Now, another thing, too, I get a lot of questions about is from agents, they ask about, when one of these numbers is wrong, they don't know what to do. And they're all tied in together. So if something is wrong in here that's grayed out, you can usually tell what it is just by which one is wrong. So let's say that the balance due is wrong. Okay, so if that's wrong, either the total is wrong or the amount paid is wrong. So look at the total first. If this is wrong, this is calculated by the sum of all reservations that are under this. Now, in this case, I only have 1 reservation, so if this number is wrong, then I know this number is also wrong. I just need to go in here, edit the reservation, and change whatever price is wrong. So let's say that it's actually, it's $100 too much, and I know that that's because the hotel price is wrong. So I just change this to $3,600 and save that. That's going to update the balance up here. And I'm going to click on the trip name here again to go back to the trip screen. And now you can see my trip total is correct. Now, if this is correct but the balance is wrong, the trip total paid is wrong. So you just scroll down to the trip payments and figure out you might have 1, you might have 5, whatever the case may be. One of those is going to be wrong. You can edit or you can add more payments, So sometimes if you import a booking that, let's say the client, you're importing a booking after the fact, like much down the road, months down the road. Let's say you just signed up, but you have a booking you made back in, February. When you import it, oftentimes what it'll do is it'll just show one generic payment for the total amount that has been paid up until this point. So this could be, $1,500. Now, if that $1,500 was actually 3 separate payments that the client made of $500, what I would do is I would edit this first one, change it to $500, put in the amount or the date it was made, all that, click create or click save, and then add 2 more payments up here, one by one, so that you show on the invoice an itemized list of payments so the client knows which card they used on what date for what amount along the way, rather than just a generic $1,500 has been paid up until this point. So anyway, once you edit that, that will adjust the trip total paid, which will affect your balance. So like I said, they're all tied together. You can tell, what's wrong. Generally, it's going to be, the trip total or the amount paid is wrong, which is affecting your balance due. So I think that's probably good for now. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to go into the extra stuff. Everything I've shown today is kind of the boring stuff, but it's also the foundation of everything. So you got to learn this process first before you can start taking advantage of the extra stuff that's going to save you time, like the automated emails or the email group emails or reporting or the dashboard, being able to use one screen on the dashboard to see, balances, upcoming trips, who's away, stuff like that. So does anyone have any general questions on anything that I've talked about, or maybe something that you think I missed on one of these screens that you have a question about? Feel free to jump in.
I have a quick question for you. I'm just kind of doing this as a refresh. So when you do an automatic payment, does it automatically pull that security code and everything like the ALG, the seamless payment that you were referring to? How does that work?
No, so what will happen, I'll just go ahead and let's go into this, and I'll just go ahead and click this. So what will happen is when you click this, it's going to pop up with a spot for you to enter the security code, and then you're going to submit it to them. So that way it's never stored. Because if we had it in here, it's storing it. So when you just type it in, it's just a temporary thing just to send for them to run the card. So it's not actually storing it anywhere.
Okay, thanks. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, and one other thing to note on this, especially for those of you that are new or those of you that have never submitted a payment to supplier, you have to be very mindful initially about, did I click this button and submit it, or did I just save a payment? Because you saw this payment is in the system and my balance has been updated, but that's just a dummy payment. I just clicked create initially, which changed my balance. So I've seen situations where, let's say they paid a deposit already and the agent goes in and they add $1,000 payment, but they just click create. They never actually ran the client's card. And oftentimes when you do that, you're sending them a new invoice showing, the new balance would be $34.50. That's often not caught until final payment time when you figure out that they owe $1,000 more than what it shows in VCRM. Now, obviously, the client knows their card was never charged, back in June today because you just added a dummy payment. But, some clients might come back and say, well, my invoice shows I owe $1,000 less. I'm not paying that other $1,000. Plus, it, makes you look bad like you don't know who owes what. So be sure, to pay attention whether you're just adding a dummy payment or you're submitting the payment. Also, when you do submit a payment, it will have a timestamp down here of when that payment was submitted. So if you run into that situation yourself, go into the payment and look for a timestamp in here. If there isn't one, that's a good indicator that you just created a dummy payment. You didn't actually run their card. You can also double check in your accounting in the supplier system as well. Any other questions?
I do have one other quick question. So, like, you send out a quote, they don't like something on it, you update it. You have to go and take off that quote that was previous because otherwise they're going to get two reminder emails, etc. There's no other way around it, correct? I just want to verify that.
Are you talking about the invoice approval?
Like if I'm sending, yeah, like the invoice approval, correct. I'm sending a quote with an invoice approval.
Yeah. If you send an invoice approval and there's an auto email you can turn on to remind them to submit it if they didn't. So yes, and if this shows as sent and it doesn't have a sign date, if you send a second one, you'd have two here. Each of those has a reminder. So yeah, you'd want to make sure that you delete this one before sending another one.
Okay. Is there an easier way around it? Because sometimes I'll be honest, I forget it. And then I'm like, darn it.
I don't know one off the top of my head. You just got to be in the habit of, okay, before I send one, make sure I don't have any in here, because this is not relevant anyway. That's another thing too. If you have two going on and the client has two links that both work, if you don't pay attention and they don't pay attention, what if they sign the wrong one that has different terms or different dates, and then never sign that second one? You know what I mean? That could be an issue too. So I'd just make sure you delete it before there should always only be one here. In most cases, there should only be one here, ever.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No? Got quite a bunch today. All right. Well, thank you all for your time. If you that are live or any of you that are watching the recording later, if you have any other topics you'd like me to discuss on a call like this, feel free to shoot me an email, Stephen, STEPHEN, @VacationCRM.com, and, give me any examples of features that you want to talk more about, or processes that you don't fully understand, anything like that, I'm happy to add that into the weekly training calls and squeeze it in, and we'll go over that. Thank you again. Hope you have a great rest of your day and week, and feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Thank you.